Good morning, you guys. Happy Sunday. I slept with my hair wet. So this is the result. This is like my total natural hair. She's a little wild, but I'm trying to embrace it this year. Matt just left to go to the gym and I have to leave in a little bit to go to Costco. But I want to start off a new little vlog. I think it's just going to be a few days, but the theme, as you can tell by the title, is getting out of my reading slump. I feel like truthfully I have been in a reading slump for pretty much most of 2023, and I feel like there's a few reasons why. I saw Sarah Caroli do this a few months ago and I loved it. I feel like I've always been obsessed with like book videos, but recently I've been really loving like what I read in a week videos and just very casual book videos. I'm not really into like the reviews, but I just like love when people take you along on their week and just share what they're reading. So I kind of wanted to do that, but give you guys some tips and tricks too on getting out of a reading slump, because I feel like I've acquired quite a few tips and tricks over like the last few years of getting back into reading. It's a really gloomy week here. It has been last week too, so I feel like it's the perfect week to get back into reading. And I figured I'd start my Sunday before we have a busy day of like Father's Day stuff with some reading and getting back into it. So I feel like there's a few reasons I've been in a slump. The first being when I got back into reading in 2020. Obviously, like, I feel like this is a lot of people. They read a ton in their like teen years, stopped because of school and like how much you have to read with school, so then reading wasn't fun. And then I picked it back up in 2020. That's when I bought my Kindle and I started reading a ton again, just like the pandemic. But I feel like I had this huge list of books to read that people recommended, right? Book Talk ended up blowing up, BookTube, all this stuff. And so I felt like I had such a big list of books to read and I was like always looking forward to reading something. And then after like about 3 years and reading probably like close to 200-300 books, I feel like I'm very much caught up on like the like, you need to read this book, this is highly recommended, this is my favorite book of the year, in like the thriller and romance space specifically. And so I felt like I had nothing really to look forward to anymore in terms of reading. Like the last few months, whenever I'd go thrifting, it would be books I'd already read, and I never really got excited to go to the bookstore anymore because I felt like it was just books I'd read before or had no interest in reading. And so I feel like that kind of started to take away the joy for me, because I would like go to the thrift store and basically most books that like I'd pick up, I'd be like, oh, I already read this. And so I was constantly just like waiting for new releases to come out. That's like one of the big reasons I feel like, is that I just kind of like caught up with all the popular books. The next is, I think just that my genres and taste is changing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a good smutty romance book from time to time, but I feel like my taste is just changing as I get older, and I'm kind of not over, because I do definitely read like a lot of KU books still, but I feel like I'm just kind of over the like modern day thriller and romance, because they all just kind of feel the same. And so that's why I really want to like heavily get into fantasy this year and just like literary fiction, because I just feel like everything is so recycled. So that also kind of puts me into a slump. Like every book I read lately, I feel like was just like recycled from another book and it wasn't very original. And then the third is just that I was reading so much. Now I am like a very fast paced reader by nature. I'm like very gifted in that sense that like I just read fast. Like my brain just processes pages on a book really, really fast, and I'm really grateful for that gift. But I think that when I started viewing reading as my job, in the sense of like I was filming the book wrap-ups, I felt like I had to jump on new releases and buy them as soon as they came out to review them for you guys. I kind of fell out of love with reading a little bit, not like a totally, but I definitely feel like a little bit. It kind of took away the like fun of it. And so this year I've really just been reflecting, which I know like sounds so silly, but it's true. I've been like reflecting on reading and books and what I want out of it, and just making it more fun again. So like taking my time reading, and I still read a lot because I'm just, like I said, I'm naturally just a very fast paced reader, but just like not feeling like I have to read 20 books a month or whatever it may be. I just feel like this year was like a lot of like 5-star or 1-star reads. Like I was really swinging completely, like the meter was going like either from 5-star to 1-star, and there wasn't really anything in between. And so I don't think that helped either with the slump, is that I'd read like a really good book and then I'd read a book that like I thought was awful, and I feel like I'd rather just read a lot of like mediocre books, you know what I mean, or 5 stars, but like I feel like I read a lot of books that like I just were not worth the hype. And so I'm ready to just like get back into the swing of things. And I know that there's people that are always, I mean, we're always going through book slumps. Everyone that reads pretty much is. Like, I don't think there's anyone out there who hasn't been in a book slump. And so I wanted to film this video with some like tips and tricks and just be super chatty for you guys. So Anyways, that's my little spiel on kind of why I feel like I've been in a slump. Let me take a sip of this coffee. And so I'm just gonna kind of spread out like tips and tricks throughout this video and just kind of what I've read lately, what I'm reading, what I like. I think it'll be over like maybe 2-3 days, I'm hoping. So I hopefully will be able to like review a book or two. But anyways, I hope you guys are excited. Let me know. I really want to film like a what I read in a week. Rachel just did one. I know Sarah's done one. I feel like Destiny's probably done one too, but I think that would be super fun to do. So maybe we'll do that if you guys want to see that. I also don't know what it is too, but I feel like I struggle with like change of seasons. Does that make sense? Like the winter is so cold here in Canada, so I kind of just like bundle up and read a ton, but then the nice weather comes and I'm outside more and I kind of get out of this routine of reading, right? Like Matt and I will go play pickleball in the evenings instead of sitting on the couch and reading. And so I think I've struggled there too, that like just with the change of seasons, my routine is changing and I kind of have to find a new routine with reading. But I think the biggest tip that I have is the harder that like you try to get out of a slump, for me the harder it is to get back into it. And so I found that like taking a total break from reading and not like forcing myself to read really helps. So taking a step back, finding a new hobby, watching a new show. I feel like forcing your way through a reading slump just doesn't work for me. I think it's so important to like honor your feelings. Stella says the same. Stella says yes, honor your feelings. And so that's one of my biggest tips. Like I really just took a step back. I found new hobbies. I was playing new games on the Switch, playing pickleball, and really just like completely getting away from reading, if that makes sense, and then picking up a book when I was ready instead of kind of like forcing my way through the slump. Those are like my tips to start off this video. This is gonna be so chatty. Of course, just like setting the vibe to get back into reading, making it a really cozy space. So for example, it's like a really rainy Sunday morning. I'm like in my PJs on the couch and I'm gonna cozy up with a book. I decided to start with an Ellen Hildebrand book. This is Nantucket Nights. It says special value. I don't really know what that means, but this book is like so tiny. It's like 200 pages. And that is another tip I have too, is to start with like a novella or something small. So I'm gonna read this. If you guys watch the vlogs, you would know that last summer I thrifted like basically all the Ellen books and I'm so excited to read them. The only ones I've read are the Winter in Paradise trilogy. It's like a good novella or just something that's like fast paced, maybe like YA. I find those are really easy to get back into just because it's not like very complex. So anyways, I'm gonna start this today. As you guys know, I'm a mood reader, so I will definitely be reading a few different books throughout this video, but I'm going to read this for a little bit and then head out to Costco. I probably won't read any more today because we have Father's Day brunch at Matt's with Matt's family, and then Father's Day dinner with my family. So I'll probably pick this back up tomorrow. But yeah, let's start some reading. All right, little update. I'm on page 65. The one thing I will say about Ellen Hildebrand books, they're not all like this, but they don't always have chapters. Like for example, this is like all one chapter from like one POV, and then like the next POV starts. So the chapters are really long, which can like either be a pro or con depending on the person, I feel like. But I feel like a great tip for like getting out of a slump is going with an author you know that you love, especially someone like Ellen Hildebrand that has so many books to choose from, or like I said, a novella obviously. But I feel like going with an author you love, or like a book that you've had like high on your TBR for a while, or something that excites you, like really just like look at your books and be like, what here excites me right now? Because you obviously aren't going to pick up a book that you don't want to read that's going to just put you deeper into your slump. But yeah, and then also if you're reading a book and you don't like it, just DNF it. Like don't force yourself through the book just to force yourself through it to get out of your reading slump. I feel like that once again will put you deeper in your slump. I really like this so far. I'm really curious as to what happened. It's basically about 3 friends and they live on Nantucket. They're like in their early 40s, late 30s. Every year, one night, they like drink champagne and then they like go like skinny dipping in Nantucket, like in the ocean, and just like catch up and like, you know, they're talking about like their affairs and all that kind of stuff. But basically, and this is on the back, I'm not like spoiling it, but basically This is like the 20th night that they're doing this. Like they've done it for 20 years, and one of the girls like goes under the water and like doesn't come back out. So that's just happened in the book, and I don't really honestly know what to expect. It just says, after the surviving friends emerge from their grief, they realize that they begin to uncover layers of secrets and their connections to each other that were never revealed on the beach. So I'm excited to see what comes of it. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really excited to keep reading this later or whenever I get back to it. But I'm gonna get ready and I'm gonna go about my day. I have to go to Costco and get hot dog buns for lunch. So I'll talk to you guys next time I pick up a book. This is the first time I'm talking to a single soul today, and it is 4:30. I have been working the day away. I spent my entire day doing bookkeeping. Not exciting in the slightest. And here we are. My outfit. What is this? I have no idea. But anyways, happy Monday. Yesterday, I ended up going to the bookstore and stuff, which I didn't like talk to you guys. I just brought you guys along on my phone. And tying back to kind of yesterday when I was saying that I feel like thrifting doesn't really bring me joy anymore, or like thrifting books doesn't bring me joy anymore. It's kind of true, because every time I go, the only like good books that I see are books like I've already read, like popular books that I've already read. And so I told myself that I was allowed to go to the bookstore yesterday. And if you guys have been following along my book journey, I don't really go to Indigo or bookstores anymore just because they're so expensive. But if there's a book that I want every like once in a while, I'll treat myself. And for the case of a reading slump, I mean, I feel like any readers watching this will get it, but I will take any excuse to buy a book. Listen, I have a bone to pick with Kindle sometimes, because I really wanted to start this new fantasy series. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get it on my Kindle because I can't find it at the thrift store. Went on Kindle, it was $11.99. Went to Indigo, and with my discount it was $12.99. So like it wasn't even that much cheaper to buy the Kindle version, so I ended up getting it at Indigo. I will share the books with you guys in a sec that I got. I'm just trying to think if I had any like tips. I feel like I've had all these points in my brain that I've been thinking about all day, and be like, Carter, bring this up when you talk to the vlog today. For me, I do really well with like completely removing myself from like the reading world. Like I don't really watch any book videos, especially when I'm in like a reading slump. I just like totally remove myself, right? I find a new hobby. I just kind of focus on other things, and I can tell when I'm ready to get back into reading because I slowly start thinking about it again. So for example, what month was it that I didn't read a single book? Was it May? I think it was May. Yeah, May I did not read a single book. I actually didn't read a single book from like mid-April to June 1st. So the rest of April, I didn't think about reading at all. Didn't think about reading the first 2 weeks of May. And then we got back from all of our trips. I was kind of just like, oh, like, I kind of want to watch some booktube videos, or, ooh, this book sounds interesting. And that's kind of how I knew I was ready to get back into reading, like getting out of my slump, like I let myself feel my feelings. And then I was starting to be curious about books again, and that's kind of how I knew I was ready for it. I feel like it can be hard to gauge like when you're ready and like forcing yourself back into reading. So that's a good gauge for me, is like when I show interest in it again. So that is another tip, is like when you start, like don't focus on it until you start finding interest in it again. I also think that like watching people like on booktube and book talk like get really excited about books really helps me. So I was scrolling on TikTok like best books of 2023 so far, and just like seeing other people get so excited and passionate about certain books helps me kind of feel like I'm ready to read again, and like, oh, I want to read that as well. I also think it's important to know like what books, genres, and authors and kind of stuff get you like back into reading, and what you should avoid. Like for me, I really struggle with reading fantasy. I really enjoy it, but I struggle with it. So I know that like when I'm getting out of a slump, I'm not just gonna go pick up a fantasy book. Like I'm gonna start with something like either a fast-paced thriller or a romance book, or like I shared yesterday, like an author I know that I love, like Ellen Hildebrand. I went to Costco, like I said, I had to get stuff for like Father's Day, and then I went to Indigo in the thrift store and I got 3 books. 2 are technically new. 1 is a book I already had, but I just replaced the hardcover. So at Costco, I picked this book up. It's called Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan, who is the author of Nora Goes Off Script. And for me, especially in the summer, I find I always kind of go through this slump, like end of spring, early summer. It really helps to, like I just talked about, like finding like a genre or a type of book that you know will get you right back into it. So for me, I know that like a good fast-paced fluffy romance really helps me, especially in the summer, reading like a summery romance or YA fantasy or like YA anything that's like a little bit more easier to understand. I find if I'm jumping back into reading, it can't be like a super complex like thriller with like multiple POVs or fantasy book. So I picked this up and I'm really excited to read it. Honestly, it might be really fluffy and whatnot, but that's okay. I think it's just about a girl. Her name is Sam. She has a fiance, a job, yada yada yada, and then she goes to her like Long Island beach house and like reconnects with the guy who broke her heart when she was like 16, like a typical summer romance. So honestly, really excited to read it, and it's not very big at all. I think it's only, let's see, 282 pages, so I think this could be a good, quick, easy read. So really excited about that. Picked that up at Costco. And then, okay, at Indigo, I got 2 books. I get this question a lot, but I did finish Once Upon a Broken Heart. I loved it. I'm just choosing to not read the second book until the 3rd book comes out this fall, because I know the second book ends on cliffhanger. So yeah, I did love it so much, and I'm so excited to read the second one. I'm just like holding off until the 3rd book is out so I can read them back to back. But in the meantime, I started Caraval and I absolutely loved it. It was about like chapter, I don't know what, 13, like this far in. I have it on my Kindle, and then I also had the hardcover, but I hate hardcover, and the rest of my Caraval series is in paperback. So I ended up selling my hardcover, and then I just bought the paperback because they have it. And I feel like every book should be at YA pricing. This was $14.99. $14.99. And with my Plum Plus, I get like 20% off or 15%. So that's great. But yeah, I already have this book technically. I just wanted the paperback and not the hardcover, and I was having a really hard time finding it on Facebook Marketplace or thrifting it. Okay, and then totally going against what I said earlier, I did want to start a new series. I feel like, and the way I'm saying I'm contradicting myself is because it's fantasy, but I feel like if you're gonna get into anything, for me at least, YA fantasy is the way to go. I really struggle with fantasy and how complex it is. Like ACOTAR, I got halfway through and then I just felt like my mind was like, just like, no. But I was also realizing too, there's so many types of fantasy, and you really got to figure out what your type of fantasy is. Like I really loved Stephanie Garber's writing and that kind of fantasy. Where was I going with this? I'm just like so excited. Oh, I don't think I would like make my first book getting back into reading a fantasy book, but I feel like once I've got that momentum again, it's a good time for me to try a new series. And yeah, I feel like you can go one of 2 ways. Like you could either love a standalone to get back into reading because a series could feel intimidating, but then I also could see how a series could be a good way to get back into reading because it's like multiple books to read, and like, you know, usually they end on cliffhangers, and so you want to read the next book and the next book. So I think it can go one of 2 ways. But I've heard Rachel talk a ton about this series, The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. So I picked up the first book, which is Clockwork Angel. And yeah, I really struggle to read fantasy, like I said. So YA, I love YA fantasy, honestly. Like my brain just comprehends it. And yeah, I just wanted a new YA fantasy series to read. I've had a hard time finding these. I was able to thrift, what's the other series called? Is it called The Shadow Hunters? No. Yeah, I've been able to find most of the Mortal Instruments books, but not the Infernal Devices. So when I saw this, and like I said earlier, when I saw that it was like cheaper to get the or like the same price to get the physical book as it was to get on Kindle, I was like, maybe I'll start a new series once I've kind of gotten to the swing of things. I know I read the back of it and it just sounded really good and interesting, and I thought maybe a good YA fantasy series is maybe like what I need. So the books that I picked up, I did have some self-control in the bookstore. I was really proud of myself, but once again, there just wasn't anything that really screamed my name. Like I feel like I've just read all the books I want to read, and any new releases I either like pre-ordered on my Kindle or I'll place a hold on Libby. So that's that. I haven't made any progress on my Ellen book yet, but I've been thinking about it all day and I've been so excited to read it. I got up a little bit, well, I didn't get up late. Matt had a late start at work today. He was working 9 to 5, so I spent the morning with him and then jumped right into work. So I've been like eager to read this. So I think I'm gonna try and read some of this now until he gets home. And then we'll see what we get up to tonight. Maybe I'll read on my Kindle. I read a lot at night. You guys know I'm a huge night owl. So I feel like I'll just be filling you guys in a lot the next day with like what I'm reading. But I'm very excited to keep going with this, and I feel like a novella is like a good place to get back into it. So I think my plan is to finish this and then maybe start that summer romance. I don't know, I have so many books on my like little TBR. We'll see, but I'm gonna keep reading this. Okay, I am in the middle, well, not really the middle, I'm basically done. I'm waiting for Matt to get home. He's getting a haircut, of making dinner. And something I'm also trying to do, which this is silly, I feel like some of these tips like are very just like applicable to me, but to change up the way I was doing things. So I mean, not to say that the way I was reading before like contributed to my slump, but just like switching things up. Like there's no harm in switching it up. I feel like part of the reason I got myself into such a slump in 2023 is I felt like I always had to be reading, like every spare second. And obviously saying that, like there's nothing wrong if that's what you enjoy doing. Maybe you have like little ones. Like I know that Bianca like listens to her audiobook like on her drive to like the gym, or in the house, like when she's vlogging and stuff, she'll like talk about how she's like listening to an audiobook. And I obviously think we all kind of are in different phases of life, but for me I was almost like reading too much, if that makes sense. Like I was just like, at any chance I had, I was picking up my Kindle and reading. Like I felt like I had to in any spare second read. What I'm trying to do is not do that and kind of like delegate specific times to read. I'm just, once again, I think the tip here is just like switching up the way you were doing things. So now, instead of feeling like I have to read anytime I have a spare second, I've just been like reading like pockets of time, like in the morning, or I read a lot at night because I'm a night owl, but I've stopped just like reading in like little pockets of time, which maybe you're the kind of person that wants to try doing that, but for me, I almost felt like that's all I was doing was reading. And so I've been just like kind of forcing myself to slow down. Meat is in the oven and the pasta's cooking and I have nothing to do, like I'll put on a YouTube video or I'll like talk to Matt. I don't need to be reading. So that is my tip. Not specifically that, but just like switching up the way that you're doing things. We are not reading in little pockets of time that we have. Matt's home. Good morning, guys. Happy Tuesday. It is like 7:45 right now and I'm going to sit and read for a little bit this morning. You guys know I'm very much the kind of person that like I just kind of do whatever I want to do that morning, and I woke up and I really wanted to read, which is how you know I'm getting out of my reading slump. And same thing last night. Lately what Matt and I have been doing, just because we haven't found a show we want to watch together, we've just been putting The Office on and rewatching that and then doing our own thing. Like Matt's been playing Zelda, I will like edit a video or read or whatever. And last night, for the first time like forever, I really just like wanted to finish my book and read. And like, you know that feeling when like you're just like giddy to read? Like I missed that feeling so much. So I got that yesterday and I was literally so happy, so excited. So anyways, I ended up finishing my book last night just because it was like so tiny, and to be honest, throughout like the plot twist is like revealed halfway through. I was like definitely just like skimming towards the end because I just wanted to finish it, and I'll give you guys a review of that in a sec. But I just want to remind people that I think it can be really easy to compare yourself online, especially with like booktube and book talk, because some people's full-time jobs, which this is not me dissing them, this is like iconic honestly, if you are a full-time book talk girly or booktube girly or boy, if you do like booktube full-time, that is like the coolest job ever. You literally just get to read all day and make YouTube videos, right? But I think it's really easy to compare that with where you are. For example, like I was so in my head last night, I was like, I'm not gonna post this video, it's so boring compared to the ones that like the booktube girlies make, because I'm not reading 2, 3, 4 books in the span of a few days, right? Like I have to log on to my corporate job in a little bit, and I just want to remind you guys that it is like, we all read at different paces, and like yes, I'm a fast-paced reader, but I'm still not gonna be able to like read 2, 3 books in the span of a few days. And I honestly don't think that's really, for my situation, like the healthiest thing to do, is to just like 100% dive back in it. I think it's so important to like feel your feelings, have the slump and then like slowly reintegrate yourself back into reading. So I just want to remind you guys that we all read at different paces, and do not compare yourself with someone who reads full time for their job. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's like my little spiel of the morning. But the plan for today is I'm obviously gonna work. I'll probably start work around like 8:30 or so. I have like flex start with my job, which is great. Through all my tips to make sure I didn't miss any, because like y'all, I'm really giving y'all all the tips. Like I want this video to be like very informative, and like you can take some tips from it. And if you have any tips that I didn't mention, comment them down below. I think another tip that has been really helpful for me is to take the pressure off. Like I said last night when I was cooking dinner, is just like read when I want to read and don't put pressure on myself. Like, oh, okay, it's time for bed. Like reading is part of your night routine. Now it's time to read. Like if you don't want to read, don't read. My morning routines, if you guys watch the vlogs, you guys know they're kind of very much like go with the flow. Like if I want to read one morning, I'll read, but if I don't, I don't. Like I'm not gonna put that pressure on myself to read if I don't want to. And I think that's what I kind of was doing wrong last year, was putting this pressure on myself that like your nighttime routine, your morning routine, and your breaks, they all have to include reading. Read. And that kind of made me fall out of love with reading. Yeah, but I'll give you guys a quick little review because I did finish this last night. I gave it a 1 star, which is kind of ironic because like it was a fast-paced book that I was hoping to bring me out of my slump, but I think I'm already out of my slumps, hopefully, so like this didn't really affect me. But it was like, it had a good premise going. It was super fast-paced, like light. The ending just wrapped up way too quick for me, and I was kind of expecting like a second plot twist because they revealed the plot twist like halfway through. And so the last like half of the book was just like utter fluff. Like there was like no meaning to it, and I was just like really disappointed. I do think this is one of her first books though. It was written in 2002. So I don't think it's a good book. Like if it's your first like Ellen book you're reading, like definitely give her other ones a go. I feel like it was honestly like a waste of my day yesterday, which I hate like saying that, but like I feel like I got to the end and was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like that's it. It's also just like basically the first like 3/4 of the book all takes place within like a day, and it's just like there's just like so much detail, like almost too much. I know, I just feel like I had a lot of questions towards the end that were like left unanswered, and it almost seemed like she like got bored of the book and just like wrapped it up so quick, because like this like all takes place within like 2 to 3 days, and then the book just wraps up in like 3 pages and you're like, oh, okay, cool, like happy ever after, great. But yeah, her other books are definitely a lot better, so don't let this like dissuade you from reading Ellen, but this was just, it just wasn't for me. So there's that. I did start this one this morning, but I'm actually gonna put it down because not that it's not good, it's really good so far. I really love it. It's like I said, it's like a cute fluffy little summer romance, but I know like because I'm a mood reader, I know that like I'll be able to fly through this, and like I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like it for the most part, knock on wood. And so I'm gonna save this and then start something else because I know I'm gonna like this and it's an easy read. So I'm gonna save this, and I think I'm gonna start, I don't know, some kind of like fantasy book maybe, we'll see. But I'm trying to see what I've read on my Kindle recently that I can also review for you guys. Okay, another tip that I have for you guys, which works really well for me, is rereading a book that you know you love but you don't remember the details of. That always helps. So when I was first getting out of my slump, I decided to pick up Throttled by Lauren Asher, and now that I am like really into F1, I was like, I really want to reread the series because I feel like I'll just enjoy it and appreciate it a lot more. Standalone romance series called the Dirty Air series, I believe. It's about a fictional like F1 team called Bandini, and yeah, they're a bunch of like standalone romances, but they're all interconnected, so you can read them all on their own, but they obviously make sense if you read them as a series. And it's one of those books that I read like probably a year or two ago, and I remember like the overall plot, but I didn't remember the details, and so I've started reading that, and that's what I've been reading at night on my Kindle because I don't like to read with like the light on. And that is like one of my biggest tips, because that was the first book I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick back up Throttled and I'm gonna, you know, hopefully it's gonna pull me out of my slump. And it definitely did. Like I was so into it, and it's one of those books that since I've already read it, I can kind of just read like a chapter or two every night, and that definitely really helps. So I wanted to give that tip because that is like one of my biggest tips, is rereading a book that you know you loved but you don't remember the little details of. But I'm feeling like I'm in a good swing that I could maybe start a fantasy book, so I'm trying to decide if I want to keep going with Fourth Wing. I really want to start One for My Enemy by Olive E. Blake, which is what Rachel Catherine recommended in one of her recent week of reading vlogs. And another tip that I have too when you're like getting out of a slump, this kind of works more for like fantasy because I feel like the playlists aren't as good for like thriller and romance books. There are so many playlists on Spotify that go with the book, and I just feel like that really like sets the vibe, sets the tone, kind of like immersifies you in the book. So I'm gonna see if there is a playlist. I feel like One for My Enemy is just like really up my alley, so I think I'm gonna start that one. But the only thing I don't like is when playlists have words. Like I like when it's instrumental. So, oh, I found a good one. Okay, I'm gonna start this book and then I'm gonna get going with work, and then I'll probably end this vlog off because I feel like there's so many tips in this video. But yeah, let's do a little reading.